Welcome into another episode of Texas Sports Unfiltered. Today, our tour around the Big 12 Conference continues. We make our way up I-35 west to Fort Worth, Texas. We're talking about the TCU Horned Frogs today. Of course, the Horned Frogs coming off a berth in the national championship game and a tremendous year one for head coach Sonny Dykes. And joining us today, the color commentator on the radio team for the TCU Horned Frogs, the great Landry Burdine, with me today. Landry, thanks so much for the time, man. How are you?
Man, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. Anytime I get to do this, it means football's around the corner, so that's a good thing, right?
Amen. Amen. And this weekend, of course, is the first game for the TCU Horned Frogs. Before we talk about this Saturday's matchup, and boy, it is quite the headliner that you guys have to open up the season, man, I want to get your thoughts on the preseason Big 12 poll, right? Just when you saw the preseason poll and you see TCU way down there at number 5, are you thinking, man, did anyone not watch college football last year? Or are you thinking that, all right, now we lost a lot from last season's team, maybe this is fair? You know, what was your initial reaction when you saw the Big 12 preseason poll come out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I tend not to get too worked up about it. I mean, last year's a prime example. I think we were picked 7th. There's so much parity. It's such a good league, and there's a lot of really strong football teams. I mean, if you think about it, the Frogs were just this close to losing not one game, but several games. I mean, there were 2 or 3 games where they were down by double digits going into the second half that, they probably shouldn't have won those games. So there's a lot of luck that plays into a season like that. There's a lot of health factors that play into a season like that. The Frogs were abnormally healthy last year, which I think is a credit to the strength and conditioning program, what they've got going on there. But, yeah, no, I mean, when you lose, look, man, you lose, Heisman runner-up, you lose Quentin Johnson, you lose Darius Davis, Amari DeMarcado, Kendry Miller. I mean, basically all of your weapons on offense, and then you lose, your main 2 defensive linemen. You lose a Thorpe Award winner at corner. They could have put them lower, and I wouldn't have been surprised. So, they've done a really good job backfilling a lot of that. So, I think, my expectations for the season are pretty high, but I can see why they did it for sure.
Landry, they always say it's tough to follow a legend, right? I mean, Gary Patterson was a legend for Fort Worth. The guy's got a statue outside of Amon G. Carter of him. I mean, he did so many great things for that program for such a long time. Well, it didn't look very difficult for Sonny Dykes to follow up a legend. I mean, what a tremendous, tremendous year one for him. You talked about the health luck. You talked about, the ball bouncing TCU's way a few times last season. But, man, just talk about the job Sonny Dykes did and just the confidence that the TCU fan base has in this guy moving forward.
Yeah, he brought in an incredible staff. He made injury prevention a priority. He was very open and honest about that. I think they brought in like 10 or 15, performance type guys, right? So you got a strength coach, but he's got a huge staff. And I think that played a large role in it. But look, he inherited some really good players. He brought in guys to fill gaps, where he saw weaknesses. And that's where a lot of the credit lies. I mean, he's been really good at working the portal and finding guys that he likes. I mean, Johnny Hodges didn't get a phone call from anyone except for Sonny Dykes. And he wound up being, an all-conference linebacker and arguably, was in the discussion for Small American Awards. So, I think what he did that was really unique was he united a fan base that was a little bit fractured. There's 2 or 3 losing seasons in a row do that. I don't care where you're at. And, there was a level of stress put on that team that when he got there, you could just kind of feel the air come back in the room a little bit. And that's not a knock on Gary. I mean, Gary was my coach personally, and, I think the world of him. But, sometimes things run their course and it's time to move on. And I think that was a prime example of a time when that was needed to happen. And, man, I just remember going out to practice and the music was different. The vibe was different. It was open, like anybody could go to practice. And so that was kind of a unique thing. And he pushed all the right buttons. That's the only way I know to put it. And that's hard to do. But it takes a tremendous amount of experience to know which buttons to push too. And you got to give him a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, it's about as good of a year one as you could possibly have.
Yeah.
You brought up Max Duggan leaving, of course, the Heisman runner-up, put together a tremendous, tremendous season in Fort Worth in 2022. He's off to the NFL, but the guy who actually beat Max Duggan out for the starting quarterback job last offseason is back. Chandler Morris, look, last year obviously wasn't his year, but now he's got the keys to the whip. It is his time to lead that TCU program. What are your expectations from Chandler Morris here in 2023?
Pretty high. The reason he won the job out of fall camp last year was his accuracy. That was something that Duggan had kind of struggled with. Obviously, he got better as the year went on last year. That wound up being one of his strengths. But that's why Chandler Morris won that job. He was just a playmaker, and he could deliver the football in tight spaces and was very accurate. And none of that is any different. I think that the Kendall Briles' offense suits him well. He's going to be asked to make some shorter throws and, get the ball out quicker, get it in the hands of the playmakers, those kinds of things. I don't think you're going to see him run as much as you saw Max Duggan do. He's not as big. Max could handle that a little bit. Chandler's a smaller guy, but I just think they're going to get away from that somewhat. I think they're going to run him when they have to, but they've got so much speed on that side of the ball that I think they're just going to want him to sit back there and pick people apart. And that's what he's good at. So the season, and you can say it's about any team, right? But the season kind of rises or falls with the quarterback. And if Chandler Morris is good, then this team has a chance to be special.
Is he the biggest question for this TCU team? And if not, what do you think is the biggest question, maybe personnel-wise, facing this bunch going into 2023?
I think the quarterback's always the biggest question. But setting that aside, you lose your Thorpe Award winner in Travius Hodges-Tomlinson at one corner. They backfilled that with a guy named Avery Helm, who they're very high on. And Josh Newton at the other corner is going to be good. I think if you had to point to something, it'd probably be the defensive line. You've got not as much experience there. They brought in some guys that they think that they're very high on, that they think are going to, do a good job. But really, you're only returning, day in, day out playmaker was Dominic Williams, who, by the way, was 17-year-old freshman last year when he started the season and did nothing but play his tail off. I mean, he went toe-to-toe with the Remington Award winner against Michigan, and I would argue won that battle. So that would be the question mark for me. Everyone else is pretty much back. The wide receiver room, it shocked me today. I think there's 7 transfers in that wide receiver room. So, I mean, literally backfilled a room that emptied out with, Quentin Johnston and Darius Davis and all those guys leaving. And now you got Savion Williams, who's kind of going to be the key guy, and he's been around a long time. But everybody else is a transfer. So it's going to be interesting to see how those guys gel.
Yeah, Landry, I'm trying to think of a time where a game with a 3-touchdown line had as much hype as TCU and Colorado, which of course is coming up on Saturday in Fort Worth. Obviously, Coach Prime making his way to Boulder, and that was the story of the college football offseason until, I guess, all the realignment dominoes started to fall. But I don't know if there's ever been a program that's had as little success as Colorado has over the last few years, just be in the limelight as much as they were. And the trash talk has already started. I saw you tweet out or retweet some videos about what some of the Colorado coaches and players have been saying about this matchup this weekend. Obviously, a lot of pomp and circumstance with the Buffaloes coming to town. What's your confidence level in TCU maybe being able to quiet Coach Prime in Colorado a little bit this weekend?
Isn't that remarkable? He goes to a team that won one game, was awful. They were absolutely horrible. And not only does he get primetime game number 1, but gets him in a new conference too. I mean, solely based on him showing up. It's remarkable. But, I'm confident. It's really hard. I think Deion's going to do a really good job over there. I think he's, people mistake some of the flash and some of the things he says for, not being head coach like, right? And so maybe he gets knocked a little bit. That dude knows what he's doing, and he surrounds himself with good coaches. And the best leaders do that. And so he's actually a pretty humble guy when it comes to those kind of things. He's happy to reach out to people that, he thinks may know more than he does, and they'll bring him on staff. And so I think from an X's and O's standpoint, they're going to be pretty good. I think the issue that Colorado has is depth. They turned over, I want to say it was like 65 new players on that roster this year. And, a lot of those guys, Travis Hunter's obviously a really good player. He pops out on film. Shadur Sanders, we'll see. The jury's out. I think the defenses that he's going to be facing are going to be a lot tougher than the ones he faced at Jacksonville State. And I don't think I'm unique in that opinion. So, I feel pretty good about it. Playing at home, it's going to be 105 degrees. And, you can't duplicate that kind of environment in Colorado. The guys here are used to it. So all those things to say that, I'm glad it's hyped up. It makes for a lot more fun, 11 a.m., 105-degree game. But, I think when the rubber meets the road, I think the Frogs will take care of business. I did not know the line was 3 touchdowns. That's kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, I'm seeing 20.5 right now as we're recording on Monday night. So it's crazy how many people have bet their hard-earned money on Colorado to win the national championship this year. Like totally forgetting what you said, that they won 1 game last season, and they've got all of these questions, yet they are the bells of the ball right now in college football.
Yeah, it's hard to turn a roster over like that, man. I mean, you only get a certain number of visits, right? So, I mean, there's kids that didn't even get to go on visits that they brought in. And, you got to remember a lot of these guys are transferring because it's primetime, but a lot of them are transferring because they weren't playing where they were.
Yeah.
I mean, just call it what it is. So, not all of them, but a lot of them. And so, I don't know. It's going to take him 2 or 3 more years of that kind of recruiting, and then I think he'll really have something, and they're going to be a good addition to the Big 12. But this year, it's going to be interesting to see how well they do. But I like the Frogs' chances.
Yeah, me too. You talked about the addition to the Big 12, right? And you brought up realignment a couple of moments ago. Would love to get your thoughts on the new additions coming to the Big 12, both this year and in 2024. Obviously, Texas and Oklahoma in their final year of the conference, they'll depart for the SEC. But, tip of the cap to Brett Yormark and the Big 12 offices. It feels like they did a good job pivoting and finding ways to keep this conference alive and well. Your thoughts on kind of the new look Big 12 that kind of starts this year, but obviously will really be in full force next year.
Yeah, it was nice to see the commissioner go on offense. It was for forever. It seemed like the Big 12 was just, doing a really poor job of playing defense. And so I was glad to see him go get the schools he did initially. If you really think about it, you got University of Houston, which I think is the 2nd largest school in the state of Texas, Central Florida, which is maybe the largest school in the country. BYU has a huge following, and so does, Cincinnati. And, when you look at, you're getting University of, those are good to have, right? Well, then you add, basically the 4 corners in Colorado, Utah, and the 2 Arizona schools, which I'm a huge fan of the Arizona schools, and especially University of Arizona. We got a lot of friends out there, and they have a rabid fan base. So what's not to like? I mean, 2 years ago, the Pac-12 was talking about poaching all the teams from the Big 12, and how the tables have turned. So I'm excited about it. I'm not crazy about all the consolidation in college football. I like the regional rivalry component of things, but money talks, man, and that's just where this game's headed. And I'm glad TCU's included in it.
You've got to be a little upset that Texas is leaving, right? I mean, you guys have owned the Longhorns. What is it, 8-3 since you guys joined the Big 12? I mean, it's a rivalry, but it's been kind of one-sided since y'all joined this league. You have to be upset that you're giving up what has been basically a free win for you guys recently.
You're not going to bait me into that one, man. But yes, it has been fun, beating Texas regularly over the last decade. And that was something that, going back, because I was in 95, I was in the weight room when we kind of found out we were being left out of the Southwest Conference, right? So you go all the way back to those days. And then as TCU clawed its way back, all we heard was wait till they get in a real conference, wait till they have to play Texas, wait till they have to play Oklahoma. And here TCU has competed for championships, a lot of the time, and certainly handled Texas almost all of the time. And so, I don't like those guys leaving, though. I really don't. Just from a regional aspect, man, it's so much fun to go down to Austin. I mean, that game was so awesome last year. The energy in that stadium was the best I've seen. And I've covered a lot of games down at the University of Texas, and the fan base was crazy, and it was just fun. And you miss that, man. You're not going to get that. And TCU versus Central Florida, are you going to get that same hype? Probably not. And, so from that standpoint, I'm going to miss that for sure.
Yeah, I'll let you go on this one, Landry. And once again, thanks for the time tonight. Ceiling and floor for this TCU team this year. If everything goes right, what is this team capable of? If everything goes wrong, how far can they fall?
Yeah, I think if everything goes right, you're looking at college football playoff type talent team. They have that ability. Now, again, it's all going to go right. You almost can't afford a loss. Last year it was by an inch in the Big 12 championship game. If that doesn't happen, they're not in. And so, they're going to have to be really fortunate to get back there. But they certainly have the capability to do that. On a floor, man, I think a floor is going to be probably a 3-loss type, maybe 4. But I'm hard pressed to see if the Frogs stay healthy and all the caveats that you would need to add to that, right? If they lose a bunch of their starting 22, then all bets are off. But I don't see that team that I've been watching. I don't see them losing a lot of games unless, like I said, unless they lose a quarterback or they lose, a key cog in the wheel. So it's a really good football team. And I tell you where they've gotten better is they've gotten bigger. They've gotten longer. And when they get off the bus now, they look like a football team. So it's good.
Yeah, we'll see what Sonny Dykes can do for an encore in year 2. Y'all make sure to follow Landry on Twitter at Landry Burdine. You see his Twitter handle, the top right portion of your screen. Landry, thanks so much for the time, man. This was a lot of fun. Best of luck to y'all this season.
Oh, you bet. Anytime, just give me a shout if you ever want me to hop back on. Maybe we'll have a little playoff preview if we get back there again.
There we go. Maybe the week of Texas TCU.
There you go.
We'll roll with that. Thanks a lot, brother.